Tell the rogue ambassador, Kenya is not United States. Kenya is not a colony of United States. Keep your mouth shut when you hear. Otherwise, you will call for your recall back to your country.
I arrived in Kenya days before the August 22 general elections. What I witnessed was nothing short of remarkable. Kenya held what many analysts and commentators say was the freest, fairest, and most credible election in Kenyan history. The elections were observed by international and local election organizations, and the results were upheld by the Kenyan Supreme Court, and power was transferred orderly and peacefully at the time.
Thank you. Here on the program on The Explainer tonight, we're so glad to be hosting U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Ambassador MEG WHITMAN. Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for joining us on the program tonight. I'd like to begin by asking you about, the historic state visit by President Ruto to the United States. Let's just start by, upon his return, as you know, there was such heated debate in the country about the cost of his trip. Madam Ambassador, could you explain to us the policy and the protocol of a state visit such as the one we saw in May, and who takes care of the cost?
Yeah. So, first of all, we were delighted to host President Ruto on behalf of the Kenyan people, and frankly, by extension, all of Africa. This was the first head of state from an African country to get a state visit since 2008. So it was quite historic, and I think built on our 60 years of relationship between the United States and Kenya. And basically, the sort of protocol, if you will, is that the head of state and his entourage gets themselves to the United States, and then we take care of the expenses from there, and then they have to get themselves home. So that's how it works.
All right. So the whole kerfuffle about a jet and who was paying for it, you say it's Kenya that would take care of? This is not
the United States of America. The Kenyan government has to take care of that.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that. Let's have a good relationship with President William Ruto. And we've seen you talk, and we've seen you have quite some rapport, since your posting here. Is this a conversation you have had with him privately? Would you tell us what it is you say to him about the events over the last few months, including those very strong allegations?
Yeah, so I meet not regularly with the president, but I do talk with him, and frankly other members of government as well. The CSs in the first round and now the CSs in the second round. And we have very straightforward conversations on a number of different issues. I'm not going to share private conversations, but I can tell you we've been very clear and very frank about the core values that actually Kenya and the United States share. You are the leading democracy probably on the continent, and we've been a democracy for 200 and some odd years, and 255 years, and it's important that we compare notes and are very frank with each other about how we see the world. Well, I think that he did make some changes as a direct result of the Gen Z protesters. So you said it correctly. He pulled down the finance bill. He dismissed his entire cabinet. He replaced the head of the police and has talked about doing more on the key issues that the Gen Z had, which was efforts to combat corruption, efforts to jumpstart the economy and create more jobs. I mean, fundamentally, I think the core issue for the Gen Z was many things, but jobs. I mean, you've got a million students graduating from high school and college every year, and they're all not finding jobs that they deserve. And that creates a lot of tension. And he has said he's going to do things about corruption and jobs. So I think he's been listening. We have to see what actually transpires.
All right. But yes, some of the members of the cabinet were brought back. What were your thoughts on the vetting process that took place?
Well, I'll leave that up to the Kenyan government. There's quite a robust process of the cabinet members are nominated. They spend time in front of Parliament, and it's really up to Parliament to make the judgments about each and every one of the cabinet members.
Yeah, but yet in a tweet on the 1st of August, Madam Ambassador, you said, as Kenyans look ahead to the vetting of cabinet nominees beginning today, we recognize the importance of integrity in public service and the National Assembly's vital role in upholding Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya. That was rather specific, talking about matters of integrity and accountability. Is there a reason you were very specific about that? Is there something you were particularly concerned about with the integrity of some of the nominees?
Not particularly about some of the nominees, although some may have issues, and hopefully they were fully vetted by the cabinet. What I will say is, as you know, I think Kenya has incredible potential. This is really the city on the shining hill in all of Africa in many ways. But if Kenya is not to fulfill its full potential, my belief it will be because of pervasive corruption. And so I applaud Gen Z for bringing that issue to the fore. I applaud the government for actions that we believe they will take, we hope they will take. And this is a long-standing problem. It is a problem in every African country, many Latin American countries. Back in the day, it was a problem in the United States. But ultimately, corruption is a waste of resources. It doesn't give people the feeling of empowerment and the ability to control their own destiny. And in the end, I think Kenya has got to combat this.
Do you think enough?
MEG WHITMAN, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, resigned on November 13, 2024, amidst growing pressure from various sectors within Kenya. Her resignation came just days after Donald Trump's return to the White House, and after sustained public calls for her to step down. Some of these calls were driven by her handling of sensitive political issues during her tenure. Whitman, a Republican, had been seen by some as too closely aligned with President William Ruto's government, which led to accusations that she was overlooking critical human rights violations. Throughout her time as ambassador, Whitman focused on bolstering economic ties between Kenya and the U.S. She actively promoted Kenya as an attractive destination for American businesses, aiming to increase trade, investment, and job opportunities. Her initiative, Why Africa, Why Kenya, helped increase U.S. investments in Kenya. Moreover, she championed Kenya's status as the first major non-NATO ally in sub-Saharan Africa, which was a significant diplomatic achievement. However, her approach to diplomacy, especially regarding domestic political matters, raised concerns. Whitman's critics accused her of turning a blind eye to issues such as extrajudicial killings, disappearances, and general human rights violations in Kenya. These concerns came to a head after the June 2024 Gens protests, where many citizens were killed by police forces and others were abducted. Despite the protests and subsequent abuses, Whitman was slow to speak out, leading to accusations that she was ignoring these violations for the sake of maintaining positive relations with the Kenyan government. The tension over her handling of political issues came into sharper focus after Trump's surprising victory in the 2024 U.S. elections. Many Kenyans, particularly those in the opposition, saw her support for Ruto as a sign of bias, further fueling calls for her resignation. A prominent public defender, Gitobu Imanyara, even called for her recall, suggesting that her tenure was marked by a failure to uphold democratic values in Kenya. Whitman herself responded to the criticism by stating that, as a political appointee, she served at the request of the U.S. president. She emphasized that her diplomatic focus had been on expanding economic opportunities for both Kenyans and Americans, rather than engaging deeply in Kenyan political affairs. Whitman also pointed out that her tenure had seen significant achievements, including helping Kenya deal with natural disasters and public health crises, such as malaria and HIV. Despite the criticism, Whitman had supporters who believed that she played a key role in strengthening the relationship between the U.S. and Kenya. Under her leadership, Kenya's diplomatic standing in Africa grew, and the U.S. expanded its engagement with the country on multiple fronts. This included delivering aid during catastrophic flooding in 2023 and advancing health initiatives to combat infectious diseases.